and welcome to this series of conversations that we're having here with Equality Now, Capital FM, and Better for Kenya. We're dubbing these Your Voice Matters, and we'll tell you why in a bit. I'm Janet Mbugua, I'm your moderator, joined by friends and colleagues, so this is really exciting for me because this conversation is about media and the entertainment industry then and now. And it'll make sense why we're speaking to Pinky and Amina, because we can all draw from experiences we've had over the years. And later on, Equality Now will come on set and talk to us a little bit more about the Generation Equality Forum that's taking place from the 30th of June, and why this is such a pivotal moment in history when it comes to gender equality. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen,
drum roll,
drum roll, please. You can introduce, I'll introduce you guys.
Okay.
I'll introduce you. Amina's like, don't, please don't. Pinky Ghelani, actress, model, TV presenter, radio presenter, producer, content creator, superwoman in many ways.
Thank you. I'm glad you threw that in.
I threw that. And very similarly, Amina Abdi, same thing, actress, TV presenter, radio presenter, content creator, MC, another superwoman. It's just incredible to be sitting with you two.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, really
You're
good.
welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, sorry.
You're welcome.
Amina's like, I have that effect on people.
I really do. I will be signing autographs after this.
Wow.
No, but it's really cool. You know, the two of you don't understand like how much people look up to you, and I think I borrow from that. When I remember that the younger girls who look up to me, I never said I want to be a role model. Like, I mess up all the time, you know, but for some reason there are people who get inspired, and I was inspired by the both of you, and it's really cool to sort of be here and to even be called up as a panelist to speak about gender equality. But we've experienced a lot of it in the entertainment industry.
And I really want to get to that. We can draw on certain experiences. But first off, you can tell us a little bit, maybe we'll start with you, Pinky, then Amina, on your journey in this industry. I know it's a long one for all of us, so trying to capture when you started and where you are today.
So I started at the age of 19. I lost my brother when I was 17 years old. So I was in uni in the States. I came back a week later and I was like, I'll never leave home because bad things happen when I leave home. Then I went into retail and somebody was like, oh, you know, we're doing a show for the Asian community on KBC. Why don't you try out for it? And that's when the media bug bit me. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is awesome. I moved from there on to KBC Radio. And like I said, that was 19. I was 19 at that time. I'm 45 today. Wow. So it's been an interesting journey, and I have loads of experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't even know we'll be able.
Lots and lots.
We
of
probably
stories.
wouldn't be able to unpack everything.
No.
We'll do like sidebar conversations.
Exactly.
So 19, and what about you, Amina?
19 too. Oh my gosh, Pinky, you do not look 45.
I know. Can you
don't
just?
look
You know, first of all, you know, when black girls ask me about what do you do, I'm like, but black don't crack. So you guys cannot ask me because you will look like this forever.
For the rest of your life. Wow, that's.
Yeah.
I think, you know, just like Pinky started off at KBC, so I feel like a veteran because everyone passes through KBC.
Yeah.
I think it's like some unwritten rule or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
KBC.
if you're not gone through KBC, are you really?
Are you really a journalist? Are
So
you
I
a
haven't
media
gone through
personality?
KBC, so I don't know what
are you
Amina
really
and Pinky are trying
really
to say.
Janet?
We
It's
don't
fine.
know, Janet. We don't know your role. We don't know. Are you legit? We're going to figure that out as this goes on. But I started off at 19 as well. Mine was a different story. I didn't have the funds to go to uni at the time, and I had to hustle. I didn't, you know, stop and feel bad and throw a pity party and wonder why me? Oh God, have you forsaken me? Which happens a lot because life happens to a lot of us. This pandemic was something that none of us saw, and here we are somehow surviving through it. And that's what, you know, life is all about. The industry is very, well, which word can I use to describe it?
You know what? That's a good question. Let's all think of one word to describe this industry.
Goodness.
I know.
Is it a good word or a bad word?
Well, I think the most realistic word to you, mine would be more bad than good, because there's more bad than good that happens. I mean, you get paid, there are perks that come with it, and you get fame, people get to know you, but then there's a lot you have to go through. When you live under that microscopic lens, you're not, you're human at the end of the day. There's this unrealistic pedestal that they put you on that no one can live up to, but for some reason, as Janet Mbugua, you should never have any problems within your marriage.
Smile
you
and
should
wave.
not have any problems when it comes to giving birth. And you should always invest your money, and you should know everything to do with your life because you are in media. You chose to do this job, and for that we're going to troll you. And there's so much more that you go through. Not only that, and then the sexism that goes through in the industry, where you're given a job based on your gender. I remember when I got the trend on NTV, one of the questions I heard people were asking were, can a woman handle it? And I was like, what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's because, your predecessor was male, so they
And
say...
so there was the one before, James Smart, was also male.
I hear what you've said about these unrealistic expectations, and I think we can all agree that, yes, it's empowering and special to be in this industry because of the opportunities.
Yes.
But again, the reason we're having this conversation is, what are some of the curveballs that have been thrown that I think we can now reflect on? Because, there's this conversation going on globally, and even if it's actresses and models and music, everyone is now reflecting on, hang on, that shouldn't have happened. And I feel like even here at home, we can think back about something that was said or done a decade or a decade plus, that you can think now that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So first, the word to describe, and if we can't find the word now, we'll find it later. But without necessarily naming names and stations, etc., are you able to pick on something that happened that was said or that? Pinky's like, how much time do you have? Her eyes are just like, how much time do you have? The one that really made you, even then, something in you felt like this isn't right, and now when you reflect on it, you're saying, that certainly wasn't right. If you can just kind of summarize, and then Amina the same.
Janet, it's so difficult to be vague.
Yeah.
Because it will point fingers. You will sort of be able to put the pieces together of the puzzle. So yes, there are lots of incidents that happen. There are lots of times where I questioned that moment, and now when I reflect and you go back into it and you're like, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you do better? Why didn't you stand up for yourself? But it's only because, and I think we were talking about this earlier as well, what Amina said, and it's to echo her sentiments, that we have evolved.
Yeah.
Maybe at that time we just did what we knew best, and we didn't react or we didn't speak up. So yeah, there have been many times, there have been many things that I have gone through personally where I can say, like, it was just wrong. It did affect me. But I'll give you one incident that I think is probably a lighter note of all of this. Having been Miss India Kenya, I was telling my 10-year-old daughter, I'm like, I was celebrating 20 years of being Miss India Kenya. And she's like, but what made you better than everyone?
Oh.
And that question sat with me because I teach her not to compare herself to anyone else. Yet here I am, her mother, who stood on a stage and competed with other women to win a crown.
That's intense.
Yeah, so that to me made me question everything about my ethos. Like, who am I? How come I allowed even that to be a part of my life? And it was a big part of my life, and I was celebrated for it. But now I'm like, what did make me better than...
It's interesting because a lot of pageant conversations are also happening globally. Some people are saying cancel the pageants.
Yeah.
Like, we don't really need to be putting women in swimwear and
Pitting them against each
them
other.
against each other. And I mean, it's just a good thing that we're in a time when we can reflect and have these conversations. Your daughter's on the right path, by the way.
Wow.
And like, more power to her if she's
Oh my
already
God.
asking that. So I like what you're saying. You can't necessarily say the incident because too many parts will come together. Are you able to highlight something that happened, and based especially on the fact that you were a female media personality?
No, I think, so right before we started this, Pinky was sharing some incidences that took place, and I was in shock. The things that people told her, the things that they said, how they acted, and I was like, wow, Pinky, how did you still put on that brave face and go on with work and still remain employed? Because in 2021, there's so many people who would have just simply walked away, because right now there's social media, and now there's so many organizations that can support you. There's so many other women who can help create more awareness about what it is that happened to you. But at that time, it was very, very difficult, and not just for her, but for so many other women. And for me, I think it's just luck. It's sheer luck and being fortunate. I think it was just favored that I didn't go through those experiences. But then the ones I experienced were on gender pay gap, or you not being hired because you're female. They could look at your resume and they're like, oh, she's like qualified, but then she's a woman and we need, a man because he's stronger, or because he has, like in my, or they say things like, he's more hyper, or he's more energetic, or he's more this, or he's more that. And there would just be reasons that don't make sense. So those are the ones that I went through. But then the ones that Pinky is talking about, there's so many artists who come to my studio and they tell me, at my studio.
No, own it.
Claim it. Claim it. What to interview on Angalewa Kishindwa, your studio. Anyway, so they come to the studio and they tell me how they're told to sleep with so-and-so or to go on dates with so-and-so. When I started doing music, I remember people were asking me for money, and I was being asked, pay this money for your song to get played. And then a DJ that I knew for a very long time told me, but if you're willing to do a bit more with some people, not with me, your music could sell and you could start getting gigs. And that's when I was like, that's what I need to do.
Yeah. And this was recent.
This is years. This is like back. 10 years. This is 2011, 2010.
Okay.
And he said, if you want to do more, if you want to sell, you want to go to concerts, you want to start selling out arenas, this is what you have to do. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe music is not for me, because if that's what I need to do, then that sucks.
Yeah. And I want to draw what both of you are saying to, again, why this conversation is happening. It's because sexism, even ageism, colorism,
ageism.
they're all so rife even now. I think it's important that a lot of things are being unlearned.
Yeah.
We have to appreciate that. I think it's also important that people are being called out. That I just think what we need to see at some point, I don't know if we will, is some kind of policy that protects us or protects people from having to do certain things. I just feel like a lot of the time, it's an invisible war that women face. And I can also, I think through almost being passed over for my first travel show job because I was too thin, which was just very odd. And I remember the good thing is the producer pushed back to the board and said, what does that have to do with her delivery? Because we were doing audition tapes. But he told me it was actually a bit of a fight, strangely.
Yeah.
And then later it's, she's too young. And then later it's, she's too something. So there was always, a box that you'd been asked to fit into. You're just never enough as you are for the job that's at hand.
That's true.
We've all been in the industry a while, right? Do you think a lot has changed in a good way, that perhaps those who are coming up now or will come after us may not have to have the same struggles? Or are your concerns still that, no, these will remain?
This is why I'm mad. I'm mad because Pinky started her career, as she said, this is 26 years ago. That was right around the time we had the conference. We're talking about the Beijing
Right,
conference.
there you go.
So if she's in 2021 sharing with me similar experiences that she's gone through
2 years ago,
that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So no, Janet, we may be recording it. Will Smith said it's not that racism is happening more now, it's that it's being recorded more now.
Yeah.
So maybe we have more platforms to start having these discussions, and men and authorities are listening more to what it is that we have to say, but I don't think much has changed. And if we even, just see all these clips that trend all the time of how guys, discuss rape issues or SGBV, they still think it is the woman's fault. So they don't understand why we're crying and talking so much about this. So I don't think much has changed. I just think that now we have social media to start these trends, and we have discussions like these that we can talk about it. But has it changed? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think things have changed within the spaces that women work or are exposed to. But we are finding our voice. It does start with people who have been in the industry as long as I have. Yes, I have to change as well in order for that change to happen. I can't just shrug my shoulders and mentor people younger than me and say, well, just deal with it. No, be the voice. Yes. Help this person find a way to be able to make a change and be part of that change. You don't have to be the one wearing the crown, but you can definitely hold the hands of people and say, yes, this is how we're going to change it. When you talk about ageism, this is something I've recently experienced. Just even last week, someone was like, oh, she is too old, or she's been in there for too long and is now, she needs to let go. I'm like, I'm hanging on to what? It's my business. How dare you tell me to stop working? And it's come from a woman. So that's another thing we need to call out, is women hating on women. And, you know, it is like, oh, you know, you guys can't get along. And no, you do see a lot of support from women. But also, why are you so insecure that I can't continue my journey? How am I harming you or hurting you?
That is true. Yeah. I remember when I got pregnant, they said the same thing. And then, you know, which was supposed to be a joyous time in my life. And then the minute I said, oh, I was expecting, they were like, oh, here she is. She's going to be a mom. We have to let her go. And they started looking for my replacement. And I remember the shock of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. And it was a female as well, who's, you know, a mom already. So what does being a mother have to do with me delivering, you know, at my work?
A lot of the time, so you've also both pointed at that, again, with pregnancy and motherhood. I do remember somebody once in the newsroom around election time saying, elections are coming, can we not be getting pregnant? Yeah, true story. A few of us escalated it because we said, you can't how is he saying such things like that in the newsroom? But it was addressed. But he said it with full confidence. You cannot be doing that because it's an election year. But it is unfortunate. I think with patriarchy and sexism, a lot of the times there's also women who, I think I've heard the phrase patriarchal princess being used. So it's almost like you adopt that the same, you know, if it's the same thinking, and if it's gotten you to where you are, then, you know, you need to protect that, etc. But I want us to take a short break because we'll be inviting Equality Now on the panel to tell us more about Generation Equality Forum. And then as we wind up, it would be great to hear from you all, what do you think needs to change and what are the practical steps to changing it? If we're saying the industry has pretty much remained the same, which I agree with, then there's something that needs to shift. It has to start with someone. It has to start somewhere. So what does that look like? And then hopefully we'll project that the next 25 years don't have these kinds of conversations. So we'll take a short break and we'll be back with Equality Now to talk a little bit about the conference and our collective call to action. Welcome back to the first in a series of conversations with Equality Now, Better for Kenya, and Capital FM called Your Voice Matters. And we'll learn in a few moments why your voice also matters in conversations around sexism and gender inequalities. Just a really big topic of conversation as we mark 26 years since the Beijing Women's Conference. And joining us now, first I still have Pinky Ghelani and Amina Abdi on set. And now we have Judy Gitau of Equality Now. She'll tell us a little bit more about what the organization does and why 2021 is such an important year in talking about gender equality. Judy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Janet.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Equality Now and then going into Generation Equality.
All right. Equality Now is an international women's rights organization that works for a just world for women and girls. Basically, we address where laws are discriminatory against women and girls. We champion the causes of women, whether it's harmful practices, FGM, child marriage, and we address sexual violence as well as sex trafficking. And we do that not just in Kenya, but across the region and across the world.
We'll talk a little bit about the forum in a bit, but any reaction to the conversation I was having earlier with Amina and Pinky? What stood out about the conversation that we were having?
Several things. First, I mean, it's a pivotal moment to say 26 years and we're still dealing with the same issues, that we're still talking about women being sexually harassed in the workplace, being passed on for promotions, being denied specific opportunities, not being paid equally. That's a big deal. And in a world where everybody thinks we all live in Nairobi, and so because all women can speak and dress the way they want, this is still happening. It's an absolute mess. The second thing that I think caught my attention was with regards to the patriarchal princess. The truth of the matter is, patriarchy is the system. And you'll find that many of those women who are patriarchal princesses have had to play the game to get where it is they are. And inevitably, you'll find that unfortunately, some women end up being custodians of a system that they have found, a system that they've inherited and found that there's no way to get to the top lest they play the game. It's as though you've been fighting the devil for so long, you don't know how else to behave and how else to portray. But it's no excuse. The truth of the matter is there needs to be equality in all spheres. I mean, it's our reality, and it's something that we must deal with and something we must fight until we're all equal.
Yeah. Just as Judy said that, and I know nobody wants to admit this, but did you ever feel, Amina or Pinky, at any one point that that thought crossed your mind of, oh, come on, you know, just put on your big girl pants and do it. We've all had to do it before.
Absolutely.
Almost like playing into the narrative that I fought my way here, and you don't have to play the gender card because I've been here. You just need to figure out how to move to the next level, almost like supporting, unconsciously, but supporting the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Have you found yourselves?
Yes, yes.
I think for me, no, not when it comes to these sexist comments, these disrespectful, unnecessary things that men say to women in the workplace, especially when it comes to entertainment. Remember, we're around so much alcohol, drugs, people are high, they're lit. Janet, Judy, they're litty. It's a party. So the energy is different. So then they feel like, you know, and they blame it on the alcohol, they blame it on this, and they blame it on that. But it's not. That's unacceptable. And I always feel like, especially when I see a younger girl going through it, like as I was saying, so in 1995, the conference is taking place in Beijing. We're thinking, oh my gosh, the world is about to change. Pinky's getting into the industry. She's hopeful. She's dreaming that things are going to change. It's going to turn for the better. And then I'm telling her close to 3 decades later, I'm sorry, Pinky, but nothing much is happening. When I see a younger girl complaining about the same thing, I feel like I let her down. You know, I feel like that should not have happened. Because when, like I was telling you, I joined the industry because I didn't have money to go to uni to do law. So I wasn't coming into the industry because I didn't know what to do with my body, and I'm here to assist you with your fascinations and your fantasy. No. So when you come into the industry, you're poor, you're broke, you're desperate, you're trying to get your mom out of hospital, you're trying to pay for school fees, you don't know what point they find you in, your dad is dying and they need you to, you know, and we've been at that point where you're so desperate, and so you don't know if this girl is going to say yes to your advances because they were just too desperate. So I feel so bad that when I had the say, I had the voice, I didn't speak up and I didn't put in policies where I could have helped this girl today to not have to do that.
But just before you respond, Judy, just Pinky, yeah.
I just want to say, but do you see the difference between the generations? For me, it was, yes, no, but it would, something would happen to me, I would handle it in that space and time, and then I would let it be. I wouldn't go and create a scene about it. I would not go and say, oh my God, this just happened to me and it is wrong, it is bad. And this is the change. This is what we need to see more of. And I feel the younger generation, you know, the generation that follows you, Generation Z, are the change. Yeah. Because they are vocal. And they don't care. They don't put up with it. And they also don't look at genders. They don't. You know, they call them, some of them call themselves they.
Yes, yeah.
There's no male or female. It's they.
So we have to pay tribute where tribute is due. Yeah. They're only vocal and able to speak in that way because of what has been done over the years. Think about it. 25 years ago, we didn't even have a female minister. Yeah. The truth of the matter is, when we went to Beijing, Honorable Nyiva Mwendwa was appointed so that we could have a female-led delegation. Yes. And it was not as of law. I mean, we were begging the state at the time to have a woman. Right now, we speak as of right and say 2/3 gender rule, we have to have women. It's as of right. There you go. It's as of right. Yeah. We are able to speak the way we are now, not because your generation was any weaker, but that was the card that was dealt then. Yes. Similarly, it's until 2000, people forget, it's until 2006 that we had a Sexual Offences Act. Before then, sexual offences were just shelved somewhere within the penal code. And so someone could be violated and it couldn't fit within the frame of the legal framework that existed. And so what are you speaking about? You don't even have a right to speak of. Yeah. Until 2010, as a mother, I couldn't give my son citizenship, for example, if I married a non-Kenyan. He wouldn't be a Kenyan, full stop. But if a man married someone else from a different country, the child would be a Kenyan instantly, and nobody knows this. So the generation that speaks now has a fundamental legal framework supporting them. And the challenge we face now is for them not just to know it, but to ensure it's fully realized. I mean, at the end of the day, one shouldn't be facing these kinds of discriminatory processes and procedures within the workplace.
Yes.
I see it akin to bullies. You know, you asked about, do you sometimes wear big pants? I mean, in my practice, when we've been practicing law throughout, we'd face it in court, we'd face it in pupillage, we'd face it in different spaces, and you don't want to be the crybaby. You don't want to be the one who played, you're the girl who was weak and so on and so forth. But when you look at it, it's like those bullies who perhaps were bullied in Form 1 and then bully others when they're in Form 4 or Form 3 downwards. I have never understood that theory.
Me too.
Why it felt so bad
Yes.
to be oppressed. It felt so bad to have your rights taken away. So why would you want to visit that on someone else? And so to carry that on, and to have it under the guise of I don't know, I'm lit, or it's exciting, or this is how the industry works, is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And so there's need for penalties, but also there's need for this generation to know that it's more than our right.
Yeah.
It needs to be beyond the laws. It needs to be realized for us.
Yeah. No, because it's so true. She's right. You know, Pinky said that this generation is like this, and I see my younger sister, who we're 11 years apart, and how she looks at feminism, and how she looks at life, and how she looks at the approach of working, and generally how workplaces have been structured. It's just so different. Like things that we allowed, or things that we thought, well, we're not the first people to go through this. They're like unacceptable.
And they are strong.
Yeah, vocal.
And it's important that we encourage that.
Absolutely,
You know, as you're saying, and then to Judy's point, also for them to understand the frameworks that protect them. Let's talk a little bit about Generation Equality Forum, which is, 26 years. Sometimes it's hard to think 26 years, and I think we mentioned it earlier, and still things, they've changed, but they're still the same. You know, that saying. I think there's been progress. I think it's been slow at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So we're going into this forum, which you can touch on a little bit, Judy, and then think through what the wins you hope would be before then Amina and Pinky talk about what you hope to see going forward in the industry.
Well, in a nutshell, Generation Equality Forum is this generation will be equal. What I mean by that is 26 years ago, as I said, we really had nothing, not on paper and not in practice. People could be violated and there's nowhere it could go. 50+% of the population would be women, but whether or not you're represented in parliament is immaterial. Women would not have access to economic resources. Women wouldn't have access to reproductive health and rights. I mean, you with regards to family planning, it wasn't up to you. Your body wasn't yours. And so Beijing happened. There was a conference in Nairobi before, but Beijing was for different governments to come together to commit to 12 things that they said they would do to ensure women are equal. Fundamentally, it was to say that at the very heart of it, within constitutions, would say men and women are equal. I know everybody thinks really that, yes, it was as basic as that, to say within our laws that men and women are equal. And so it's been 26 years since that moment. Nobody remembers much about Beijing except that I remember when women would come back from Beijing and a woman would so much as say, this is my right. Everybody would say, oh yeah, you're from Beijing, are you? Nobody remembers anything else. But it was a fundamental moment for women because it finally declared us human beings, for not just for Kenya, but for the world. So it's 26 years after, and we are counting what have we achieved since then. And on a good note, we've achieved the laws. At the very least, almost all of our laws, I mean, as far as Kenya is concerned, we have laws that protect women. We have laws that say men and women are equal. We have laws that, ensure if you're violated, you can seek recourse in the courtroom and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, beyond the laws, there's very little that has happened. Do we still see numbers of women being violated? Yes. Our discussion today is evidence of that. That even in an industry so glamorous and so fantastic, I was telling Pinky earlier, I've only seen her on screen until now. In this industry, all of you can still point to specific incidences where despite your glamour and the platform that you hold, you've been pushed back on account of you being women. So you can imagine then the girl in Mogotio. You can imagine in our industry, the work that we do. As recently as last week, we get phone calls from Samburu because 4 girls had been cut and are now on their way to being married as children, 13, 14, in our present day country. And so the laws are beautiful, but what else? Yeah. So the Generation Equality Forum is about different governments, different civil society organizations, different actors, whether they're businessmen, philanthropists, coming together in a moment and saying, what's the last mile that we can push to make sure that when we finally mark the 26-year mark, we can say, other than the law, we've done this and this and this. And they've chosen 6 main things to say, this we can deliver on. And for Kenya, our hallmark moment is to end gender-based violence. So we have the law, but what can we do to say, at the very least, we've moved the dial in ending gender-based violence?
Okay. Ooh, that's a really powerful.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
You've captured it so well. This conversation is kind of called Your Voice Matters, right? And I want to tie that in now. Why do you think our voices matter? And by us, I'm talking about not just people in media, but we're influencers, right? That's the term that's used. Why do you think it's important that we participate in these conversations and pass the baton for others to do the same? And then how do you hope our voices can also kind of plug into this bigger message of ending gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and just gender inequalities in totality?
I think when we go back to 26 years ago and we see that, that there was a shift, there was a change, there was a movement. And when you say something like it's progressive, but it's very slow, as with anything, I think anything that is going to make a difference is going to be slow. The reason our voices matter, Janet, is because we have to use them. And we have to use them to have uncomfortable conversations. And we have to be able to say, yes, I was sexually harassed. And yes, I did nothing about it. And I kept quiet. And that's an uncomfortable situation. You're calling yourself out. So call yourself out. Be that person who says, I didn't do anything then, but I can make a change still till today. I can. My voice is still valid. And I will empower the next generation, the generations that follow, because we can't keep quiet anymore, Janet. And that's why I say, we need to use our voice. We've been given a voice for a reason. And they say that when you see something going wrong and you are a bystander, you are part of what is going wrong. So you must use your voice. And whether it's Janet Mbugua or Amina Abdi or anybody who's watching, you're all influencers. No matter who you are, you're influencing your family, your society, your school children. If you're a teacher, you are an influencer, so you must use your voice. Just going back to what you said about the girls in Samburu, I mean, women are a part of what's happening, and they must use their voices to stand up for these children. Yeah,
it's powerful that you say call yourself out. That's really a powerful statement. Yeah.
And it's in so many different situations that you have to call yourself out. It didn't necessarily have to have happened to you. Maybe you witnessed it happening and you didn't stand up. I remember when I was working at one of these media houses, there was a young girl who now works with the BBC, and she's doing great. And if she watches it, she knows I'm talking about her. And she was just being bullied for no other reason other than the fact that she was just so young and beautiful. And they just felt like, why did you get a job here? What are you bringing to the table? And she would just be bullied. And I remember, like, I stood up to the editor and I told him, what you're doing is just, it's wrong. Why? And it's on a WhatsApp group, and we're having like a back and forth, and no one else is saying something. No one else is saying anything. Now, when we say equality for women begins with justice for girls, I don't even know if there's a similarity between patriarchal princess and internalized misogyny, right? There has to be. It's pretty much the same thing, where we're so used to, especially like in my community, we're so used to things being done that way that we don't even think that we have a right. You don't question. When I go back and talk to my grandmothers or to my aunties, and they think I've always been the black sheep of the family because I question. I question why. Why is it that in my community women cannot attend meetings, even if it has everything to do with us? How is it that we have no say? It's 2021. How is it that no woman can attend any of these gatherings? It doesn't make any sense to me. And when you ask why, why do we feel like we have to say something? Number one, to whom much is given, much is expected. And whether or not I liked it, or as I said at the beginning, I wanted to be a role model when I did this or not, it doesn't matter. When you're now standing somewhere and you have 1,000 or 10,000 or 50 or 100,000 people who are following you online, who are listening to you, that means you have some form of influence. And when I speak and I say it's wrong to, for someone to do this to you, no one should assault you at the office. You do not need to sleep with your boss. You don't need to sleep with your supervisor. You don't need to have any sexual exchanges for anything to happen. That is not right. That's not normal. Then a young girl who's watching in a few years, when someone's like, oh, if you want this job, you have to give me something, then she remembers, no, that's why we do it. And I think the reason, for some of us it's so hard is because the communities we grow up in, we're not allowed to speak up. So miraculously, in my 20s now, because I'm doing these shows, does not mean that now I'll speak up against injustices that I see. So it takes a lot of unlearning, it takes a lot of confidence, and for you to be very bold, and for all of the women who come from very conservative communities that, you have the women and the men against you. You have such a tall order. It's so much work, and I know it's so hard because we get ostracized and we actually do get excommunicated. People, we say it as a joke, but in our communities, people X you out. No one speaks to you. It's like in certain communities when you have your period and they send you away for 4 days as if you asked for this. It makes no sense. You can't cook, you can't clean. Some of these things just need to stop, and I think if they see some of us speaking Janet, then they say, oh, okay, if she said that's wrong, then you know what I mean? We have to train them, we have to teach them. And I'm so thankful that Pinky is saying to the next generation, because it's not just about us. Yeah. And Judy made a very important point. We haven't noticed the progress as much because we want drastic change, but there's so much that's happened. And we need to be aware that it only happens when we start speaking and start believing that our voice matters.
Wow. I know we have to wind up soon, but these are such powerful punchlines that I really hope can stand as a testament to the importance of speaking out. I have a small example before I get closing comments. There's also somebody in the media, well, Adele, in the media. I attended this roundtable she was having, I think towards the end of 2017, about sexual harassment, street harassment, and the panelists were campus girls, and I was kind of a guest speaker. And after that, we took a picture, she posted it, and a blogger, I remember this, and a blogger kind of turned that into, and I remember this line, it was like, who would want to rape you? What happened next, though, is what is alluding to sort of like what Pinky and Amina have said, even you, Judy, is I was literally the only person who spoke out against it. I did a blog post, and I was just like, you cannot laugh at rape culture or use it as some excuse to exercise your misogyny, sexism, and how you feel about this person. And I know this person was just going to turn it into a troll fest, which they did, but I'm like, it's okay, I was expecting it. And then people were DMing Adele and I saying, good for you for speaking out. I'm like, why are you in my DM?
Yeah, comment.
Why are you not out there? And from that time, I realized it's not that people don't want to, but I think there is a fear, one, I don't know if I'm making this up, but one is a little bit to what you said in terms of
how you were brought up.
How you're brought up, and but this happens. So maybe some people saying it's not a big deal. Other people saying we don't know that we should respond to that. I just feel like silence is you're complicit, right? And that silence was loud.
It was very loud.
And I remember.
I was so mad about that for so
I was so
long.
mad. I still get mad, and I just said from that day, I'm just not gonna shut up. And I know people also don't want the trolling. We know how trolling can just weigh you down. I think this is a whole other conversation the three of us can have on trolling and being a public figure, a female public figure, and how we're just the easiest targets.
Because we're not insulted on the same level. Excuse me, we are not, Janet.
What do you mean?
If a guy does the same thing you do,
oh yeah, of course.
10 times.
Yeah. Yes. And I just, from that day, I remember my mom a long time ago telling me, because I was one of those student prefects, who was like, we need a revolution, we need to change things. And I cried because the headmaster called me out in front of my dad, blah, blah, blah. And my dad is in the car and I'm crying, and he just calls my mom. He's like, just talk to her. My dad and I are tight. I think he just said that day, I didn't know what to tell you. And my mom said, if you're going to be prepared to speak up for people, then you have to be prepared to be persecuted.
Absolutely.
And she just said, speak up, my daughter. Like, I'm not stopping you from it. It comes with persecution. And that never left me. And then when that happened again with the blog and everything, I just said, okay, fine. Then I'm just going to roll up my sleeves and be persecuted. Because since you'll do it anyway, even if I wear a bad pair of heels.
You might as well.
You might as, sorry, I feel like we've really pivoted.
It takes courage.
It takes a lot of courage, but sorry.
If enough of us speak out,
Yeah.
you shut up the bully.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to do that. I think it's important to also know who's on the right side of the war. Because if you let somebody who's on the wrong keep talking and talking loudly, then that person wins. I know we're not giving actual examples or naming names, but quite recently, one person initially spoke out and she was trolled against some blasé type of talking about sexual and gender-based violence in a studio, in a radio show. So one person spoke out, and then everybody was shutting them up. And then another person spoke out, and then a big liquor company pulled out, and everybody said, let's see who buys drinks, and let's see if, and all of that. But when enough people spoke out, something happened. So I think let's all stand up and speak out. You will be surprised that within the community, there are many people who see things your way. And it's the few who are rubbish, who are loudest. And so we imagine.
But can I just say, that big liquor company, the person behind that is a woman who's very outspoken.
And that's fantastic.
And who we should all aim to be like.
Yes.
She's amazing.
But then what people, perhaps I shouldn't talk about the behind the scenes discussions, but leading to that moment, in different groups, women mobilized and were asking, who do you know? Bring this to their attention. Who do you know? Bring this to their attention.
Yeah.
So it's possible she didn't know about this, but I do know that in at least 2 of the groups that I am in, different women were saying, who do we know? Because bring it to their attention.
Mobilize.
So that everybody speaks out, and the person who should indeed be embarrassed is embarrassed. The truth of the matter is this. This is the same culture that comes when, for example, a girl has been raped. Why is she the one bearing the shame?
And
Why
then it's that whole headline.
So similarly, I mean,
A girl was raped.
Yeah.
Not
so
man
this is the
raped.
thing in
Exactly.
that particular incident,
Exactly.
Janet.
Yeah.
Why is the person who's talking crass not embarrassed?
Yeah.
Why should you carry the shame? And so there's need for us to push back. But I just want to do a quick plug with regards to rights, and just say that. I mean, and I'm sure Amina will be bored when she hears this. When she was on Capitol, I said this, and she was like, what? Rights are not 10 balls in a bucket. That if women get 6, men only have 4 to share. And I think it needs to be clear. Everybody has their rights. And I have my 10, you have your 10. If someone shoots me and I die, you won't get extra days. And so by people standing up and stopping women from achieving their rights, they don't get extra rights. By people making it a competition, they don't get extra rights. If someone is finding hurdles to their pathway, remove your hurdles. Don't put hurdles on someone else's pathway. It's not a competition.
Yeah.
I just want to add something.
Yeah, then you can add, and then we'll close in comments as well, because we could have this conversation for 3 more hours, because there's a lot to. Yeah, we're not doing great on time. You'll edit that. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So for me, when you say what's the change, because it just dawned on me as Judy was talking, we are mothers of boys, so we must teach our sons. That's also something that is very important.
Yeah.
That we are powerful women, and we must make our sons understand that, there is room for us, and we deserve to be respected.
No, I love that. I think about that every day.
Yeah.
And again, your last comment on what are you currently doing to kind of create a shift in whatever small or big way?
Oh, I'm doing a lot. I
Okay.
call myself a conversation curator because I am having those uncomfortable conversations, and it's starting with my community. It's starting with the Indian community, where it's just like calling them out on all the stuff that is wrong. So when you talk about your community and being the black sheep,
You're the black sheep. And then also remember, in our communities, typically it's not a woman who leads these conversations. So they're wondering, okay, so we're talking about women and it has nothing to do with giving birth? Like they matter or something?
they have a voice.
They have
I
a
love
voice?
I love what Pinky has said, mother of sons, and conversation curator, so that's kind of the role you're playing. What are you doing or trying to do in your own space, Amina, to just kind of shift these conversations and include people and make sure that the call to action is we all need to lend our voices?
I'll start by saying, you know, when we were discussing what it is that happened to lead to the big liquor company pulling out, the conversation turned very violent, and it almost, we just lost the plot of what it is that we were trying to say. When we're discussing feminism, we don't want men out of the room or off the table. We need you. We are not going to forget that we are existing in a patriarchal society. It is the reality. And we need them when we want to break some of these things that have been happening forever, to the point that we don't even know that they're wrong. So yes, we do need men part of the discussion. And I think Pinky is right. We have to start calling out our communities. Those of us that have been that have objectified women for so long, and I come from one of them, and we're having those tough discussions. I have the I Am Equal campaign that I used to, before Corona, go to high schools and talk to kids about what's happening. I took a break off of radio to come back and really understand what I want to talk about, and gender happens to be one of the things that I want to talk about now. And when we say your voice matters, we're not talking numbers or influence. If you have 10 people who can listen to you, talk to them, try and spread this message, try and create more awareness about how important it is for us to start fighting for women. When Barack Obama came years ago, he said that it's so stupid to have half of the team playing. If my family had allowed me to really go to school and and live my full potential, I have no idea who I would have ever been, because my biggest dream was supposed to be marriage. And a lot of young girls, you know, have the same sort of problem. And like Janet said, we could go forever.
Yes,
Judy.
we could. But I love what you've said just about taking a break to think through the conversations you want to have.
I have this influence, what do I want to do with it?
And I think at any one point, the three of us and maybe a lot of our peers have had to sit back and think, you know, this is something that's, it's a trigger for me, it's important, and so we're all having conversations, which is a great start. Judy, I think maybe for you, the final question is, what your hopes are for the next 26 years? I know there's a whole list of things, but like we say, this forum is coming up, and I know there'll be commitments and pledges, etc. Maybe I could ask you the one thing that you really hope can be a win coming out of the forum, and just for everyone as a call to action as well.
Can I say two things?
You can say two. You are allowed to.
The first is, I'm hoping that we move from the law just being about the law to being reality. That things such as, you know, sexual violence, you can genuinely and easily access justice, so that that for you shouldn't be the struggle. I mean, you could then, you know, get psychosocial support and counseling and so on, but the struggle should never ever be that you will not get justice for such a violation. Then, and even within that, in terms of the law being a reality, that it should prevent the violation from taking place in the first place, because the law does provide for prevention of these types of violations from taking place. And then the second thing is what you've already said with regard to conversation, that our talking and you know, what Pinky said, what Amina said, is that everybody has a sphere of influence to start the conversation, so that we can completely demystify the nonsense about rights and, you know, women's rights being about a competition. Let everybody find their purpose and their goals and go for it, and not be in the business about making others less so that you feel better about yourself. If you're the tallest amongst dwarfs, so just, you know, let it not be a competition. Let the conversations begin. Those for me are the two main things.
Well, thank you all so much, just for, I know, your spirit and for the determination to change narratives and shift them. I think it's so critical. I think there'll be a ton more of these conversations, not just with Your Voice Matters, with Equality Now, Capital FM, and Better for Kenya, but just generally, I think this year will be filled with these conversations given the milestone that we're marking. So make sure you lend your voice where you can and how you can. As has been said on this panel, you have your own sphere of influence. You don't have to wait for this big moment or big crowd. You can do it within your own confines. So thank you for watching. This, like I said, is the first in a series of conversations called Your Voice Matters. We'll have all our handles linked down below, somewhere here. And we'll have information on where you can catch this conversation as well. I'm Janet Mbugua, thanking my incredible guests and panelists, Pinky Ghelani, Amina Abdi, Judy, Gitau. We'll see you soon, and make sure you keep the conversation going on some of the topical issues that are on your mind when it comes to gender equality. Bye.
I need to.